China is expanding its reach around the globe. Last summer, the Republic of Panama cut ties with Taiwan to establish full diplomatic relationships with mainland China. This decision was made for economic reasons. China's economic and political clout is growing across Central America. Already, China is the second biggest user of the Panama Canal after the United States, and a Chinese company controls the ports on both ends of the strategic waterway. Controlling the Panama Canal Zone is part of China's strategy to become a superpower. The world's most important trade routes pass through the Strait of Malacca, the Strait of Hormuz, the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, the Turkish Straits, the Suez Canal, and the Panama Canal. Whoever controls these maritime choke points controls world trade.
I think we know why it's important. Because of everything that's going on down there now. The threat to the canal has never been more apparent. I wanted to go from there to this story that just came out about what's happening in Cologne. Now, the modern mainstream media in America would have you believe that this is just a bunch of people who are upset over plumbing not working or how long it's taking to get basic infrastructure up. And this is the Washington Post version of the MSM. The Fox News story tells you basically the exact same thing. Demonstrators are angry over what they see as slow pace of a project to revitalize Cologne's collapsed sewer system, deficient water supply, crumbling houses, ditches left open, blah, 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 blah. Now, just reading this, you would be like, okay, well, yeah, dog tastes his cat, everything's falling apart down there, and you would just move on. The real story actually comes out when you read it from the local perspective in the Latin American Herald Tribune, and this makes a lot more sense. There are multiple reasons why they won't get us out of the streets, but what mainly motivates us is this perverse aim of Panamanian President Juan Carlos Varela to use our money to kick poor people out of the city and hand it over to the rich. Gentrification. You see, they're not revitalizing this area of Cologne because they have some altruistic need to take care of the poor. They are cleaning it up and making it more palatable for wealthy Chinese investors and people to come in and take this area over. Because they're going to eventually take control of that canal completely, and they're going to have people living there. And that's why the Panamanians have cut off ties with Taiwan and are now in full diplomatic romance with China. So that's the difference between what they're telling you in America and what's actually going on in Latin America. And it has a lot to do with this. It used to be that for the Chinese to get goods from their country to the east coast of America, they would ship them to Los Angeles, and then the goods would go by train to the East Coast. That was about a 19-day trip. Taking things through the canal was about a 22-day trip. But now that the bigger end of the canal is open, the wider end that takes the bigger ships, it's actually more profitable for them to take things through the canal than it is to ship them to the West Coast and then put them by rail. That's going to cost a lot of jobs. It is going to cost a ton of jobs. The bigger part of that canal, the wider part that deals with the post-Panamax ships, is a huge coup for China. And it's going to do more to destroy the West Coast and its shipping industry than anything else. But you don't hear anything about it. So control of that canal is absolutely critical. And what I just said is in this article here, it's the balance, and how the canal keeps inflation down and how it keeps the cost of goods down. So every time you go to Target or Walmart or whatever, and you can afford the things you put in your cart, you can thank the Panama Canal. And here's the info that I just told you about. Cargo through the canal increased 23% in the first 9 months of 2017. Millions of dollars to East Coast ports. Traffic at the ports is up 30%. Cheaper to ship through the canal than to ship to Los Angeles. Now, why is that important, given what's going on down there? Well, when we look at the map, and we see the canal, and we see where it is and what's going on, we see clearly what the problem would be. We know that we have Russian bombers in Venezuela. We know that the Russians pretty much control Cuba. We know that Nicaragua is controlled by leftists. Colombia is slowly falling apart. And that we have drug gangs that are bombing American passenger ferries up here in Quintana Roo. What do you think their next target's going to be? If you were an insurer, you had an insurance company, and you saw this starting to break loose over here, what would you do to your insurance rates for moving goods? Of course, they'd go up, wouldn't they? And the people that would eat that cost would be the end consumer. And that would be the people on the East Coast. This isn't going to be something where you see, 50,000 armed Venezuelan troops marching through Colombia and then walking into Panama and overwhelming their forces. It isn't going to be that way. The fact that the Venezuelans have their military on high alert to be overrun or to be attacked shows you that there are some large players down there that are looking to position themselves to control this region in the next 10 to 20 years. Venezuela is trying to maintain its sovereignty, but it's going to be a fool's errand. They have too much oil. They're too strategic. And everything they're saying about U.S. sanctions is absolutely true. If you go to CNN Money or any other, in fact, it was kind of strange. Fox News had a link to CNN Money talking about how the fix in Venezuela is dollarization, for them to, quit the bolivar and go onto the U.S. dollar. If you don't think those two media outlets, Fox and CNN, are basically just two arms of the same idea, you really need to take a look at them with a different light, because Fox News had a link to CNN Money talking about this issue in Venezuela. And the reason I showed you this thing about China and showed you why the Panama Canal is so important is because the region is starting to crumble. Things are slowly beginning to fall apart. And when things fell apart in Syria, that's terrible. Where's Aleppo? I've never heard of that city. Oh well, poor kid. Sorry, his building got bombed. And then you go about your day. Same thing with Korea. Same thing when the Russians annexed Crimea. Same thing with Europe. It doesn't affect us. Other than, like I said, clogging up your newsfeed. But this will affect you. This will affect your trip to the grocery store. This will affect your trip to the gas station. I mean, my goodness, Florida is right there. These people don't have any more of use for these gangs than we do. They don't like shootouts in their streets either. But this isn't a problem that you can just blame on them. Where do you think the money comes from that finances these gangs? The Sinaloans, the Jaliscos, the Zetas, the ELN, the FARC. Where do you think that money comes from? The drug trade. Who buys the drugs? We do. Our money. It's a problem that we created together. And we need to fix it together. And when we start talking about pushing away from our neighbors and talking and calling our neighbors names like they're all rapists and murderers and thieves and all this kind of stuff, that doesn't fix things. It doesn't help solve the problem. You know, I was talking with a contributor, somebody who was on the channel, and asking me about if the wall was going to fix things. Think of the wall like this. Imagine if the police in your county or parish or wherever you live said, in 10 years, we are going to start setting up DUI checkpoints on all northbound roads, northbound dirt roads in the western half of the county 10 years from now. How effective do you think that would be to getting drunks? Especially when somebody would ask them, well, most of the bars are in the eastern part of the county. Well, yeah, but, you know, we'll have helicopters overhead looking down. And somebody asks, well, what about the paved roads? Well, you know, like I said, we'll have some guys with binoculars looking at those roads. But we're going to have the checkpoints, the actual physical presence, to stop the DUI people 10 years from now on all of the dirt roads in just the western half of the county. That's pretty much what the wall is. It doesn't deal with the eastern half of the county, and it doesn't deal with the paved roads, meaning the legal border crossings. And it only accounts for 10%. Meanwhile, the damage to the U.S. economy is going to be epic when things fall apart. And they've already begun to fall apart in Panama. We just covered a story of it. People are already in the streets because they see what's coming. They see the Chinese moving in. And believe me, once they get control of that canal, there's going to be very little we can do. And there's going to be this huge outcry. Why didn't we know about this? You know, why didn't somebody tell us about this? Well, somebody did. Somebody tried to warn of the Russian and Chinese influence in Venezuela. And the big push away from America, away from our values in this region and what it was going to cost America. So I'm going to continue to do these videos and try to warn people about what's coming and hope somebody listens in time. Like, share, subscribe. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.